So welcome and thank you for joining the latest episode of the TrueTalks podcast with myself, Simon, and my colleague, Shelby. Hi, Shelby.
Hello. How are we today?
Really, really good, actually. And yourself?
I'm great. It's Friday, so we're all good, right?
It is always worth doing these things on a Friday. Don't know what day this is going to go out on, probably a Friday, but hopefully if you're watching this, it's your Friday too. And we're delighted this week to invite Mark Crawford, who is a consulting director from RSM, to talk about the topic I shall mention shortly. So, hi, Mark. How are you doing?
Hi there. I'm doing well. I'm also enjoying the fact that it's Friday, but yes, I'm doing really well. Thanks.
Brilliant. So, what we're going to talk about today, which is one of the reasons that we've brought Mark in, is, and don't cringe, everybody, it's AI. I know it's a huge topic of conversation. Those that frequent LinkedIn and conferences and seminars will have had AI absolutely battered at them in recent years, or in the last couple of years especially. But we think it's a really important subject, and we wanted to discuss AI without the fluff. We wanted to really look at what it means, not only for end users and clients, but also for businesses like ourselves and for RSM, and to get rid of a bit of the hype about it and just talk about what it generally means for businesses. So before we get into that, Mark, if you want to introduce yourself, give us a bit about yourself and your role and your history.
Absolutely. So my role is at RSM, as we said, in consulting business transformation, and within that, across sector, we support companies with strategic and operational programs, from finance application to data related problems and pretty much anything in between. My background before RSM, I was at PwC for around 20 years, and I was also at Ernst & Young for about 7 years. So my background is pretty much supply chain, and supply chain is one of the areas that is being impacted at the moment by artificial intelligence, we are supporting companies with the supply chain, and what we look at, we look at the people, process, and technology they need, as well as specifically in areas such as procurement and planning. But digital transformation is therefore kind of about how technology can play supporting the role, supporting the business, getting better at what it needs to do, and that could be systems, it can be technology, or if it's purely about decision making, it's data is ensuring that that's clean, structured, and so forth. So my background, I'm a consultant to trade business. Business transformation is my area, and supply chain is my mainstay and has been for the last 25 years.
So a proper supply chain expert. Love it.
It's going to put us in our place, Simon. We're supposed to be supply chain experts.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that, Mark. You've covered quite a lot of stuff that we'll go into in more detail through the chat here, but I wanted to kick off with like a really serious question around AI. Actually, it's not. It's actually a bit of an icebreaker, a bit of a fun one, and I just want to keep it on topic. But if you could pick any sort of famous robot or AI from film or TV, and I'm talking, the likes of R2-D2 or Optimus Prime, someone like that, as your sidekick for the week, who would that be?
That is a very, very good question. It could be anybody from films with Arnold Schwarzenegger through to Star Wars, as you said. I quite like the idea of being accompanied by R2-D2. You've said it, or you said it already. That it's going to be a pretty popular choice, though, for a lot of people. But I think Star Wars 1979 or something like that. It was a very good movie. And I'd love to have R2-D2 with me throughout all my conversations.
Be such a character, I think, as well.
Exactly.
Simon, who would yours be, just out of interest?
I was going to be a bit geeky with a sort of AI theme and say HAL 2000 from 2000, how was it called? 2000? For the computer from 2001 Space Odyssey, which was the first, I think, sort of overbearing computer that kind of took over control. But I mean, yeah, that is a bit geeky, but I like the idea of R2D2 because he can just help around the house as well. You could put the dishwasher on and fold your clothes at the same time with little robotic arms. And you've got to answer now, Shelby. What's your
Yeah.
Do you know what? I like the idea of them helping around the house, and I loved Johnny Five from Short Circuit, but carrying him up the stairs to do the hoovering, I don't think is going to be possible. So I'd probably go down the Terminator Arnold Schwarzenegger route, to be fair, but Terminator 2, not Terminator 1. I don't want him chasing after me. uh, Perfect. So I guess let's delve in a little bit then. And if it would be great, Mark, if you could kind of give us your perspective on kind of where you think the current moment we're in with AI is. Is it hype? Is it reality? Is it a bit of both? Where do you see it at the moment?
But I think is a really important question because the answer is not as simple as one or the other. I think it is a bit of both. We're in a time where AI is starting to become usable for different things. However, it's still pretty embryonic in its use, where there's a lot of data in terms of sources and where the use case has been thought through. I think it works, although you need people to be able to understand the models and the way that it works. And an example is that I would give is a virtual simulation, and we often call them digital twins, and they're a powerful example of that AI-driven supply chain innovation. So yeah, I think it's used quite often, and we are getting more and more into it. But AI is still kind of looked upon as the end of the world or whatever in the extremes. So I think that we're in a little bit of a point where business itself needs to grab a hold of it and work with AI experts and work with the AI community in tandem to actually get what it is that the business needs from it.
Yeah, it's interesting you said usable AI. Simon, we've had conversations about useful AI now, haven't we? And you put me onto that term and it just lit a light bulb in my head when you did. So yeah, it's interesting you've mentioned that as well.
Yeah, and I think, I was working at a software company 12 years ago when we said our product was AI, and this was before LLMs and stuff like that. So there's I think the big change that Shelby and I have seen going to some of the conferences and hearing Microsoft talk and SAP talk and all the sort of the big ERP publishers is that, and this is where we came up with it, didn't we, Shelby, at the back of the Microsoft conference, it's now useful AI. The marketing team would hate the term, but it's actually, rather than just being a brand and a stamp on a product that might have been, sort of intuitive or do a bit of machine learning sort of 10 years ago, with the rise of agentic AI and all the sort of stuff that's coming now, you can actually see genuine use cases. So I think useful AI is a term. We'll trademark it, and I think Abby sounds to use it. That kind of leads on to the next question, which when businesses sort of first start looking at AI and seeing what sort of usefulness it can make for them, what kind of common misconceptions do you see businesses making around AI?
It's a good question because there are a lot of kind of, I guess, common misconceptions. The obvious answer is that AI is going to be the magic bullet that will solve all problems, and I don't think that's ever going to be true. It might be in 150 or 5 million years, but I don't think that's going to be true. I think the other misconception is that anyone and everyone can utilize AI, even if it is not kind of a catch-all, but it becomes a bit of a there's a little bit of a wasted time and resource if you think that you can do it but you can't do it. So you definitely need the right type of supply chain and business know-how, and as well as what you want the AI to do for you. And you also have to have the right ingredients. I mean, if you only have AI experts working for you, then how are you going to bring the right business thinking for it to do what you want it to? And so getting the right mix and the right team is really, really important. The other misconception, of course, is that it'll automatically bring the cost down, and by just having it, right? And unfortunately, that doesn't work, and it involves a lot of investment. So yeah, there are some of the misconceptions I think that organizations have today.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think you mentioned kind of obviously you started to bring it into supply chain, which is great. It's leading me into my question. So perfect. And I think the next question, I guess, really is with all that you've just said, where are we actually seeing kind of AI delivering results and real value across, those businesses and those supply chains? Where do we see that?
So I think I mentioned earlier digital twins at the very, very start, but they're now delivering kind of value to companies that have engaged with them. Virtual simulations allow simulation and testing of many different operational scenarios. And by using kind of those digital twins, you can quickly identify some of the potential capacity constraints, test efficiency improvements, or assess the impact of scaling operations. So that would be one area. And another area that I see quite a lot of businesses using at the moment, or starting to engage with, is forecasting systems, because they're driving enormous data sets, incorporating historical patterns, geopolitical signals, supplier activities, market fluctuations, and even real-time weather events. But there's all this information, and so they can deliver kind of actionable insights at remarkable pace, which is like partly the benefit, and accurately helping shape those proactive responses to challenges, and doing it, if not real time, almost real time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big part of it, because there's lots of useful data floating around supply chain businesses, but in silos, and linking all that together and being able to understand the bigger picture, the more holistic approach, I think is going to be really, really, really interesting. And that, a follow-up question to that would be, obviously predictive analytics has been around for a while. It's been a buzzword for 10 years or so. So what's different now with AI, especially kind of relating to demand planning and inventory management?
Predictive AI using statistical analysis and machine learning, so to identify patterns and behaviors, and forecasts those upcoming events. I think organizations using predictive AI to predict potential future outcomes, causation, risk exposure, and more, much more. So that this kind of technology speeds up statistical data analysis, and it can make it more accurate, due to the sheer volume of data that machine learning algorithms have at their disposal. So it's less about what I think it's less about what it's doing, and more about how quickly and how many different derivations can be compared, and then decisions taken in the near term. We'll probably come on to it later, but why I think it's more about that rather than about it making the decisions for you.
So it's more about the outcomes, the what, rather than the how.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you made the point earlier about having the right teams in place as well. And I guess we hear a lot about kind of AI actually automating tasks, and you can have a team to make sure that happens. But I guess, to your point just there about it helping with the decision making, I guess it really can augment that human side of things, especially within supply chain roles. Would you say that that's pretty fair?
Yeah, it does augment, and I think that's partly where the benefit, and the real kind of change of using AI is. It's becoming working with the human and putting the human at the center is one of the biggest things I think is ultimately important. So I think that raising our game and kind of raising our ability to put in our decisions and the value that we're creating, I think is partly the answer, right? So I think it's a bit about combining the data capability as well as some of the decision making sort of support that it can provide, and then augmenting that with the human I think there's a lot of benefit from looking at both together rather than in a separate fashion.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we all use AI on a daily basis, right? I guess now we've all got access to ChatGPT. We lovingly call him Jeff in our world because he's my colleague that helps me with everything. But I've never been able to put in my prompt and kind of get out exactly what I need. That human element is definitely needed. It's kind of that 80-20 Pareto's law, right? And you need to have that. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah, and it even says at the bottom of any ChatGPT output, this cannot be trusted, check it. So humans have got to be there to check and verify. I think we're a long way off being 100% ready to let it automate some things without giving it that oversight, which I think is really interesting.
And I think actually that's actually partly where it becomes imperative that there is some human overseeing and working with the data, because mistakes are easily made then if that kind of oversight isn't in place.
Yeah, and we were given a good analogy recently on I think it was a webinar that we were on, and it was sort of 15, 20 years ago, maybe a little longer ago than that, they started to automate car factories with robots, and everyone said, oh, the robots are taking all the jobs. Now I know they took a large portion of the like welding and riveting and all that sort of thing. But someone's got to be there to make sure, number one, the robots are doing the right thing, checking the quality control, maintaining them, updating the software. The robots can't do that yet to themselves. So yeah, I think the similar thing is what we see with AI. It needs that oversight to make sure it's doing the right things and providing the right outcomes. So just to shift focus a little bit, obviously we represent True Commerce, which is a solution provider of EDI in the supply chain space. What kind of advice would you give a solution provider sort of such as ourselves on how we should align with the AI shift?
I think it's a really interesting question as well, because there's a number of ways that you can look at it. One is bringing in that capability internally. So I think that sort of using the AI capability as part of your organization is ultimately where you might end up. I think that the precursor to that is working with other parties and working with other companies that provide that AI capability. But there's nothing is going to beat bringing the AI capability within your own organization, and I think that it's also important that that you're thinking about working with the AI capability that you're bringing in. So I think sort of often AI is looked upon as as I said earlier, as sort of a solution for everything, but actually embedding it and bringing it into teams that are working with the software development and thinking about where it's going, I think is ultimately important. Understanding the value that AI and the value that systems or computers, whatever you want to call it, can bring, and to exactly what it is that you're providing. So software companies generally, I think, will value and will need that sort of person and capability within their organization. Having said that, I do think that we're learning at the moment, and I think sort of working with other partners and is is a little bit of a step towards that.
Yeah, I think that aligns, without giving any trade secrets away, that aligns with what ourselves, True Commerce, are trying to do. It's very tempting to slap the AI badge on an old product and to say it's AI. But I think you would have got away with that 5 years ago. But I think there's a lot more reasoning out there and people understand what's going on. So we are developing an AI sort of feature or part of our solution that's really exciting, but more news to come on that in the coming months and years.
Yeah, and I think to your point of kind of we're still learning. I'd love to know what your sort of take is on where you see AI in supply chains kind of heading in the next 2 to 3 years. Like and if you, I guess if you had some like advice for those supply chain leaders about AI right now, what would that be? Sorry, that's 2 questions. Let's start with AI.
We can do
Giving you 2 questions. Let's start with AI is going to be in sort of 2 to 3 years. Where do you kind of see it within supply chains?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I think that's an interesting time frame, right? Because 2 to 3 years is actually, when we're thinking about programs or transformation programs or whatever within a consulting environment, it's 3 years is a minimum, right? I think sort of businesses are generally getting to the point where everything has to happen quicker. Decisions, reactions to markets, geopolitical tensions, etc. So all of that means that the time frame is coming down. So what's my take on where supply chain might head? I think that AI has to fix problems. It has to come. It has to be working with our current supply chain. It can't be a kind of an add-on, and therefore, I think as AI develops, it becomes part of this kind of industry capability, and it stops working on its own and it starts to intertwine with the business. That means that more experience, I think, is, as I mentioned, in the supply chain generally, and I think that that we have to also think about the new roles and the new things that are coming through from universities and colleges and the younger kind of generation coming through, and that is coming in it. It's a little bit of a melting pot at the moment. So I think that supply chain leaders have got some things to think about. It's about how to invest, how to get at money and cash from their organization, because supply chain is always an area where cost is ultimately important, and therefore, and also there's a people element, and there's about bringing new staff through, and actually flattening out, I think, some of the existing kind of reporting lines, let's say, to try and get that experience quicker and into the organization. That's where I think supply chain needs to head with AI, and it's almost less about the technology development and more about the business's development to engage and bring the technology in.
Yeah, I think we've come a long way in the last sort of 5-10 years, haven't we? And I think to your point about time, I think things are changing so quickly. You can make a prediction now for the next 3 years, and by the time we get there, everything's changed completely. You also mentioned about universities and the young talent coming through, and I've never noticed before that AI has been a master's degree, for example, and yet I'm seeing it all over my LinkedIn feed now. And I think the roles are going to change quite dramatically in the next 10 years, and what we see coming through. Really interesting.
Yeah, I think that was a really difficult question, because if he'd said to something 2 years ago, where do you think AI will be today? They probably would have got it wrong. That would have been the 10-year forecast or 5-year forecast, not the 2-year forecast. So I think it's a fascinating time. I personally have been on a journey from 5 years ago to going, oh, not AI again. Oh, that's nonsense. It's, it's Disneyland sort of stuff, and it's marketing fluff, to really having eyes opened and seeing the use of it. So kind of leads me on to the next question. But one thing we see an awful lot of with our conversations with clients in the supply chain space, we obviously offer an EDI solution which helps part of the digital transformation journey and helps streamline processes and stop data order error entry issues. Can never say that in one go. So kind of on the data side of things, many supply chain environments are obviously fragmented with data sitting in multiple systems, an ERP, a warehouse management system, and even spreadsheets. We see Excel spreadsheets more often than we should do. So how much of a barrier do you think this is to AI adoption, and how do you think businesses should work to resolve that?
I like the fact that you mentioned Excel and all of the many different kind of ways that people play with it with Power BI and so forth these days. I think that AI and all of the subject that we're talking about, I think is partly the solution, right? It's the ability to read organized and unstructured data and to figure out what's wrong, to solve problems. So an AI agent pulling the right data from multiple systems is actually a benefit, right? And therefore, I think we then have to think about what the problem is, and that is that the data needs to be sorted through. It needs to there's thinking about where things are a little bit too difficult, and when there are a million and other things to be doing within the supply chain, then we have to watch what the value that the AI can bring, but actually it will bring more and more value to our organizations because as I said, the amount of time and effort that organizations spend today on sifting through all these data sources and even plugging it together is really, really difficult. So with an AI capability doing that for you, and programmed in the right way, I think it can save us a lot of time and effort, and actually, back to what I was saying earlier, focus the humans, human benefit and value on things that are decisions that have to be made for the organization, for what they're trying to do, as opposed to sort of sifting through data. So there might be a change in where your time and effort is focused, but I think it could only be a positive, right?
Yeah, and it mirrors sort of how we've as sort of single humans have started to use ChatGPT. It started off as a bit of fun and put a picture, of a silly hat on one of your friends and that sort of stuff, to now taking over tasks that we use it to. Shelby and I use it for writing sort of long scripts for things and for presentations and for all sorts. It doesn't do it all for you, but it just helps. And what that then means is we can focus our time on more productive activities rather than spending 3 hours doing a PowerPoint. So I mean, you can just scale that up to a business, I suppose, is what you're saying. So yeah, that's good.
Although I love doing PowerPoint, but if something,
you must be the only one in the world to love doing PowerPoint, Mark.
But like we go back to what we were saying about the oversight, is if you can do the work in the background, but you've still got to finish that yourself. You still get to apply the finishing touches and be an editor, really, rather than a creator.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. I think it's important. You just mentioned like data being, kind of key here. And we see it a lot in, not in the AI side of things, just to kind of make a comparison. We see it a lot within the EDI world, where we have clients that come to us, they need EDI. They want to implement it immediately, and their data is just not ready. And so they kind of underestimate the amount of work that has to happen in the background before we can get to that point. And I guess my point is, with AI becoming more embedded, and especially in that decision-making process, how important is it for companies to really understand the kind of lineage and the accuracy of the data they're using before they get to that point in their journey?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, that one, because because of what we said right at the start about we're at a point at which the world is changing its view as to how to use AI. I've got a feeling that there's more and more requirement will come to understanding the lineage and understanding where the data's come from. And having said that, I don't think it's difficult to do. I just don't think we've actually had our eye necessarily on it as as an industry sector or as organizations. We've not really viewed a need for that from an AI perspective, and the AI teams and experts have been kind of investing their time in kind of looking at making it better. I think now in the next few years we're going to see more demand for exactly that, checking lineage, to making sure that you know where data's from and coming from, and I think that sort of RSM consulting it is working on that within its kind of cyber space and within its AI and digital kind of capability. So I think that it is an area that is now changing. It's not changed yet, but it's changing, and that we need to understand exactly where the data's from because of the reliance that is going to come from it.
Yeah, I guess clean data has always been at the heart of every company, right? It certainly has every company I've ever worked for, make sure the data's clean. But I think now more than ever, it becomes so imperative that we are aware of where our data comes from, how clean it is. I think it's just going to be something we're all going to have to swallow and get our data sorted.
Yeah, and it's going to be a big piece of work for various businesses because, with sort of legacy systems and half in the cloud, half on-prem, that there are all sorts of security issues.
Absolutely.
Making sure your data doesn't go out to the internet. I think we've done our security training, which we do every year, in the last week or so, and they've added a section in there on AI. And
well, Simon has. I've not done mine yet.
Well, should have been done by now, but yeah, it's there are people who might not know who are putting company data in ChatGPT to ask it to modify this spreadsheet and do that. And once it's out there, it's out there. So I think the security aspects is something everyone's sort of getting used to as well now.
Absolutely.
So just as a kind of like final question before we always like to do some quick fire ones at the end. So before we get to the quick fire ones, because we've mentioned this a couple of times, although I just want to double down a little bit, which is, how do you recommend that companies sort of strike the balance between automation and human review?
So it's a question that I think a lot of people are kind of worried about. So does implementation of AI mean that humans are free to kind of kick back and go on holiday forever? And it sounds good, right? But it's unlikely, right? That's going to happen. The other thing that people are thinking or worried about is that organizations can build up this automation and free themselves from the need for any human intervention, and therefore reduce down their costs. Now, I think that human roles will change to be more value adding, which I said earlier, and I think is a good thing. Automation will do the mundane, and it will add some value. It will add some significant value throughout the business process. But I'm not sure it's doing everything, and I'm confident that it won't do everything, and it won't be able to do everything. I think human intervention will be required, but it will be at a higher level, and that will require the right training for individuals. And you can already see more people, as I said, coming through with the skills that will be required. Then when we talk about sort of people-centered, it's really the idea that AI technology should amplify human strengths. And I'm a big proponent of human-centered AI, as opposed to the fear that computers will take over the world. So I think that the implementation of AI doesn't necessarily mean that we're we're going to have an end-to-end, endless holiday. But I do think there is a balance to be struck, and we're going to have to work at that as organizations, consultants, technology capabilities. We all have to bear that in what it is that we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I like the term human-centered AI. I think that sums that up quite nicely. It's we were talking before about what shifts do you think you'll see in the next 3 years. I think it's businesses learning how to adopt it and use it and close the skills gap, and and all around the human study-centric part of it, which is, you can understand the worry from people that it's going to strip jobs and and what have you, but if it allows a business to refocus, the power of it could be it could be phenomenal. Well, it is phenomenal.
Yeah. Before I jump into the quickfire round, just a kind of question, if you don't mind. It's more, I guess, more a personal worry. We talked about worried about human-centric AI, and you specifically mentioned AI taking over. And I've always joked that Terminator could happen. And I do have a question around kind of security protocols and stuff. Do you think it's stringent enough that won't happen? I mean, I'm hoping it'll never happen in our lifetime, even if it does. But do you think that AI is secure enough to not become self-aware at some point?
It's a good question, right? Because if you think back to the advent of the internet, and how that has kind of come on leaps and bounds, and in the last sort of 20 to 30 years, I would say it's a don't know, right? But that having been said, I do believe that humans, and we've got the power, and we've got the capability, and as long as we continue to do the right thing, and we put in the right kind of rigor in terms of that, making sure that the humans are in control of the machine, then I think that's a good place to be. I wouldn't like to say where it'll end up, because nobody knows. But I do believe that we're strong enough, and that we're capable enough to kind of put the right controls in place, and that's essentially what we need to do. And it's just about making sure the right people put the right controls in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'll sleep easy for a while now.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
I think just on the back end of that as well, I think there's a lot of people's thoughts on it have come from Hollywood. And there's a difference between something becoming self-aware or even sentient. I mean, we've had the Turing test since Alan Turing's days with the 50s, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And there's a big difference between something becoming self-aware and then becoming a malicious actor, which is what Hollywood tells us. They become self-aware and then want to remove the humans from the loop. Whether that's becoming batteries in the Matrix, or whether it's the robots taking over in Skynet in Terminator. You can tell I like my AI films, can't you? It's that's a huge leap from. I think we're aiming to try and make them in some way. We're giving them human body form there. Making AI self-aware. We're actually a goal I think everybody's aiming for. Really, it's to be able to, to go from making helping to making suggestions, to be able to sort of like make itself better, and whether you call that self-aware or sentient, whatever, but it then pressing the big red button and blowing us all up is a huge leap.
You mean Hollywood's not real? You burst in my bubble. All right, let's jump into a couple of quick fires, if you don't mind. So we'll just finish up. Just let's do it multiple choice for these. So, biggest barrier to AI adoption, would you say it's data, budget, or mindset?
Well, my view is it's not data, and it's not budget. I think that you can probably find the budget if you really want to. So I'd say mindset. Can always find budget, and data is bread and butter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, and I think we're just not sure yet as well. I think that's part of it. What do you think is harder, getting the data ready for AI or getting the people ready for AI? Probably just answered that in the first.
I think it did, but I think getting people ready for AI because they're and I'll give you a because they're so much harder to move. It's harder to move the people. It's easier to work through the data.
Yeah. No, good point. And I'm going to ask you to predict the future again now. So, what word do you think would best describe AI in supply chain by, let's say, 2030? Invisible, indispensable, or inevitable?
I would say inevitable.
Yeah.
Because I'm a realist. But I think that what I've said so far is that we have to partner with data, with AI, with what the changes are, and it's coming. And I've also said that it's coming fast. So I think inevitable is the definite answer.
I think it's probably a bit of everything actually there, really, isn't it? Let's hope it's invisible and does its job in the background.
Exactly.
I think it is going to be indispensable, really. It's going to, especially if it's done right. But yeah, no, I think inevitable is definitely a real key one there for sure. Would you agree, Simon?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think you can't really say any more. I think you've covered it really well there. I would have said a year ago inevitable, but that sounds a bit like foreshadowing, doesn't it, or foreboding? But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that.
No problem.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time, Mark. That was really insightful, and hopefully, anyone listening found it, found it useful as well. I think, like we said at the beginning, AI is a very common topic for webinars and podcasts and seminars and stuff, but trying to kind of cut through the custard, if you like, and break it down, especially with a supply chain focus. So I think that was really useful, and I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I enjoyed it too.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.